Oh, it's so good to see all of you. Welcome. Good morning. I was up at 6 o'clock this morning facilitating a call for the season for peace and nonviolence. So we're right in the middle of that. And we're near the end of it, actually, 64 days. This was established by the Association of Global New Thought. And it's a time period to honor people like Gandhi and Martin Luther King and those lights in the world who have made a difference, who have had a message of peace and love in this world. And so the Center for Spiritual Awareness in Sacramento has been putting together a morning call, a 6 a.m. call, and they've had different ministers facilitate. And so this morning was my morning. It's the third time I facilitated this call. In this practice today, the opportunity for practicing nonviolence was about intervention. And as part of my duty was to tell a story about intervention. And at first I thought, well, I don't know any stories about intervention. And then I thought, oh, I do. I think it's time to tell my story. And so I grew up in a very healthy, happy household. I had parents who were divorced when I was young, and they both remarried. And they're both super positive and amazing. I was a straight A student. I did everything right. And so I had no reason to be getting into the world of drugs and alcoholism. And when I guess I was around 19 or 20 and I'd moved out of my house, I got into methamphetamines. And I really loved that drug. Loved it so much. It was really good because I'm like a type A personality and I like to get a lot of things done. And that drug makes you like really active and like you can't sleep. And so you can get more done because then you can use your sleeping hours to get more stuff done, which is really great if you want to get a lot of stuff done in the world, right? And until you get to day 3 of not sleeping. And then you start changing. Your personality changes. You start seeing shadows and wondering who people really are and losing trust in humanity, seeing cops as the enemies instead of our friends, seeing your friends and knowing that you don't want them to see you like this. And then you have to, I had to stop. And so I'd stop for a little while, and then I was like, oh, I missed that. I could get more done. And then I did it again. And I got into this habit and this behavior that I thought was, it's not bad, I thought. But it was affecting things. It was affecting things in my life. It was affecting my roommate. And my roommate knew that I was doing this. And at first she was like, cool, I've, dabbled in some things, that's all right. But then she saw me kind of going downhill. And she saw me starting to lose who I really am. And we had this big fight one day, this big argument. And she was like, you need to stop. You have to stop doing this. And I'm like, no. And she's like, you're addicted. You are addicted to drugs. And I thought, me? No, I'm not. I'm not addicted. You're crazy. She said, if you don't think you're addicted, then stop. And at that moment, I realized that I couldn't stop. And I was like, oh my God, I am addicted. And it dawned on me. And I started realizing the areas of my life that had been falling to pieces. Now, my parents didn't know about this until recently, by the way, a couple of years ago. I didn't share it with them. I haven't shared it publicly at all until today. And it was a hard thing to realize about myself because I always thought good things about myself, and I realized that I had forgotten. And I wasn't myself anymore. I was using a drug as a crutch. I was using it because it just felt good. And I wanted to feel good. I liked it. But I was destroying my life. And I know that there's a lot of other people out there that are like that. And many of you may have had those experiences. Or maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you've made a wrong choice or a wrong turn. And I'd like to encourage you, if you do know anybody in your life who's kind of on that path and you haven't said something to them, I'd like to encourage you to say something to them, because if my roommate hadn't said something to me, I don't know where I'd be right now. I mean, I was selling drugs. I was having fun, I thought. But looking back at it, I realized how detrimental it was to my life and the people that I loved. And I'm really grateful for my friend. I lost her friendship because of it, but I'm still grateful for her because she was willing to speak up and willing to say something courageous to me. And knowing that each and every person still has their own choices. You can say something to somebody and they may still choose to do the thing they were going to do. And it actually took me a while to come clean. It took me a little while. But her words stuck with me and they made an impact on me. And so I'm grateful for her. And I get to look at myself and I get to be compassionate to myself at a time when I made a decision that wasn't to my benefit. And so I get to love myself in doing that. I was looking up some ideas to talk to you about. There's so much in the world on compassion. It is such a big subject. It makes such a difference in people's lives. And I saw this story of this girl who caught my eye. It's really funny because her name is Sarah Shire. Literally last name spelled the same way as my last name. And that's kind of rare. I'm just going to say that. I haven't really bumped into anybody with my last name. So, I mean, except my wife, and she took it on. So, and my family that I was born into, right? So I saw this girl, Sarah Shire, and she started this organization called Compassionate. And her story is that she was a young mother and she had an 18-year-old child and everything was going great in her life. She was a stay-at-home mom. She was loving her life. And out of the blue, her husband divorces her. And she was not expecting it. She was completely surprised. And it was a very, very challenging situation for her. And she thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive? How am I going to live? And she got very depressed and upset. And I don't know if you've been depressed or upset before, and you've had times in your life where you thought, everything is falling apart. How am I going to do this? I don't know what to do. And so she was sitting at home, confused and sad, depressed, and she saw an Ellen show. And Ellen was interviewing Wayne Dyer. It is a good combination. And Wayne Dyer was talking about the one thing that he thought was the most important thing in the world. And he said it was compassion. He said if we taught compassion in our schools, it would be a different world. If we taught the value of compassion everywhere, in our families, in our schools, in our spiritual centers, if we taught compassion, can you imagine what kind of world we'd live in? And so he encouraged people to start taking on compassion as a daily thing. So Sarah was sitting there, and she was kind of moved by this. She was like, wow, I didn't really get how powerful this simple thing could be. And she decided that she was going to take it on in her life, and she was going to do compassionate actions every day. But she thought, instead of calling it compassionate, she was going to call it compassion. Make it a verb. I'm going to have my daily compassionate. And so she took it on. I'm going to daily compassionate. Somebody out there is going to get my compassionate. Right? And so she took it on, and for 3 years she was touched, moved, and inspired by what showed up in her life. And soon her friends and family were like, you need to do something with this. So she did. She decided that she was going to create a tool for education. And she was going to create one of those cute little wristbands. And on one side it's going to be black, and the other side was going to be white. And it would say compassion, on the wristband on both sides. And what she would do, she would sell them to schools who wanted to teach compassion. And they'd use it as a fundraiser, but they'd also use it as a teaching tool. And so these kids would get these bracelets and they'd learn about compassion. And at the beginning of the day, their bracelet would be put on black. And they would do an act of compassion that day, turn it over to the white side so they could remember to do an act of compassion every day. Now, she has gone global with this. It has gone all over the world, all different countries, all different people. And she's got these testimonials from these kids who are so transformed by this tool, by this little tool that they've used in their daily life. Now, that's a moving story to me. And that shows how important it is that we're compassionate. And interestingly enough, I went onto on Sarah's Facebook page, and somebody had posted a TED Talk by Monica Lewinsky. So if you haven't seen that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, but I encourage you to see it. Now, maybe you don't remember in 1998 what happened or what didn't happen. But Monica begins her TED Talk about talking about a guy. She did this. She's having a voice for anti-bullying in the world now, and what she did, she had this talk at a school, and she said, or at a college, she said a boy came up to her who was 27. She's 41 now, and he said a line. He wanted to hit on her, and he gave her a line and said, "I could make you feel like you're 22 again." And she thought, I'm probably the only 40-year-old in the world that does not want to be 22 again. She was like, it was not a winning line at all. She did turn him down. And she said that when she was turning 22, she did something that happens to some people. She fell in love. And unfortunately, she fell in love with her boss. And even more, unfortunately, her boss was the President of the United States. Even more, unfortunately, a so-called friend had recorded all of her private conversations and decided to have tapes of all of her private conversations with the president. And so when this whole scandal erupted in 1998, it was a time when we were just getting into the internet. And before that, we only had the radio, the TV, and the newspaper in order to break news. And her story was the first story that got more hits on the internet than got in the other sources. So actually the internet was bigger on this than all the other news sources. It was the first story that came out and went global instantly. I know there were other stories, but this was a big one. It actually got more hits than anything. And she said, what people didn't understand at that time is, one, I was not only publicly humiliated, but I was globally humiliated. That the tapes that were recorded were put out there and also transcribed and put all over the internet. And she said that she had to testify that those were her tapes, and she had to sit in a room for 14 hours listening to all of the conversations that she had had, dedicating her love, saying things she said that she's highly ashamed of, all of the worst in her, being catty, being jealous, having a breakup. All of these tapes she had to re-listen to, every single one of them, in order to testify that they were really her voice. And she said she was so humiliated and ashamed about who she was and how she had behaved. And she had to go public with it. And at that time, they didn't know, we didn't have something called anti-bullying and harassment. We didn't have a language around that. But what happened to her is that the world was a huge bully. She was made fun of in ways that most of us can't even imagine. hate mail, letters, emails, internet posted everywhere. And she said people didn't realize there was a dimensional being that had made a mistake and had messed up. And so she asked, how many of you were in your early 20s and didn't make a mistake that you regret? How many of you didn't do some, stupid action? And maybe some of us didn't get caught. Maybe some of us didn't get the effects that she got. Actually, most of us didn't. And she got it on a big and a deep way. And she considered leaving this planet. The depth of public humiliation. All of the people around the world calling her every inappropriate name that could be thought of. Saying the meanest, harshest, rudest things to her constantly. And it's been happening for a long time. She couldn't get a job. She couldn't have anything. And yet, here she is. It was this month that she did this TED Talk. This month. Finally coming out and saying, enough. I made a mistake. And the only way that she made it through that time was for the compassion of the people around her. Her family loved her. Her family noticed that there was another kid who had committed suicide because he had been recorded on videotape and it had gone on the internet. And they were worried about her. Now that happens all the time now. She was the first, but it's everywhere. People can invade other people's lives and then take advantage of the shame and the humiliation and make it public. And so many kids and teenagers and people in their 20s have had this experience. And others anonymously post unkind comments. As a matter of fact, they said that there's more suicides happen because of online bullying now than physical bullying in person. And so this is a tragedy of the consciousness of our human spirit. This is a big thing that's going on right now. And the beautiful thing that she said in her talk is she said, change comes by changing our beliefs and actions. And this is exactly what we teach here. We talk about changing our minds, changing our belief systems, and recognizing that there could be a different way of being. Recognizing that we can behave like a compassionate world. We can act as if each and every person is divine. And maybe there's times when you and I have forgotten. Maybe. And maybe there's times when somebody's forgotten and they are rude or unkind to you. But I encourage you to take this as an opportunity to change your own behaviors. Monica pointed something out, and I thought it was really beautiful. She said, now we vote in clicks. A lot of us vote in clicks. So when there's news stories that are about shame and humiliation, whenever you click on that news story, it's like you're doing a vote. And you're voting for that shame and humiliation. And she said, why don't we do something different? Why don't we focus on the other stories? And why don't we, if we notice something going on, instead of being a bystander, be an upstander? And what she said is, if you notice somebody has been bullied online or an unkind thing, she said, write a note of compassion. Be an upstander. Because there's a physical person on the other side of that. And they're going to read all of that shame and blame and unkind things, and your message might be the message that helps them through. And so take that on. Be an upstander. And also take it on by thinking about, what are you voting for when you're clicking around on the computer? Where are you spending your energy? Are you spending it encouraging people, encouraging advertisers to blow up that crazy story? Or are you spending your time looking for the good, finding the people that are making great impacts in the world, like Sarah, and supporting people like that? So I encourage you to think about what you can do this week to make a difference. I encourage you to take it on. Be the compassion in the world. Take on a new thing every day. Now, how do we do this? Really easily. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Try on for size. If I were having a bad day, how would I like to be treated? And that means if somebody is unkind to you, what if you respond to them kindly? Imagine if that were you being unkind to somebody else and they responded to you kindly. It would make you think about being unkind again, maybe. But regardless of how they react, it's all about what's in here. It's about what's in here. Because you may say something or do something that has an impact on people who don't even know. You don't even know the impact. Like my roommate who said that one thing to me. Made me realize who I really am. She still doesn't know. She has no idea. And that's okay. Because she changed my life. And that makes a difference. And you could be that person. So I encourage you to go out in the world and be that bright light of love. Spread something. Uplift somebody. Upstand. And be that voice of love and light. Because truly, that's what makes this world a better place. When we see the quote, we are the ones we've been waiting for. It's us. We are the ones. So I challenge you to step into your light and to be the light in the world. Because I know that that's what this is all about. And so I celebrate you, I welcome you, I encourage you to be that bright light because I see it in each and every one of you. And I love you. Namaste. Let's pray. And so knowing right here and now that the infinite one, God, the universe, the great architect, the great creator, the quantum field that is everywhere present, and its nature is love. And so I'm tapped in, tuned in, and turned on to that love in a way that I never have been before. I am captivated by the unparalleled way that love flows through me powerfully. And I know and claim that each and every person in this room is connected to that same divine source. We are all connected to each other. And so whenever I see hurt, sorrow, when I see anger or fear, I am recognized as that is part of me suffering. And so I choose to stand in the place of love, stand in the place of peace, stand in the place of compassion, and be that voice in the world, the voice of the divine, which is of love. I allow that love to flow through me even whenever I forget, and I welcome the opportunity for other people to awaken me to my own love. I'm grateful and honored to be a part of this community, knowing that this light spreads throughout the world, that one click, one nod, one smile, one kind gesture is all it takes for this world to be completely transformed when each and every one of us take that on. And so I commit today to take that on, knowing that as I do, each and every person does here. That this light spreads throughout the world, touching, illuminating, inspiring, and uplifting everybody. Recognizing that we are here uplifting the consciousness of the world, standing in a new paradigm of being, a new paradigm that releases the old ways of bullying and harassment, that releases the ways of being anonymous in our judgment, and steps into being kind and considerate. And so I know and claim that I step into that place today, surrendering to a greater sense of knowledge, of being, of connection to the Divine One. I'm grateful. I'm grateful and honored and humbled to be part of this joy, to be a part of this love, to be a part of this great creation called life. I am so happy to be a part of it all. And so I choose to do my work. I choose to do it because I know I can have an impact. And I know that each and everybody here does as well. And so releasing this word into that infinite nature of the universe, into that law, into that great creator that continues to say, yes, I create upon this idea. I choose to manifest this into the world to a greater and greater degree. And I know and claim that it is already done. And so I sit back and relax and allow myself to be the vessel for divine good in the world. And allow each and every person show up as their divine vessel. And I bless it exactly as it is and exactly as it is not. In its joy, in its sorrow, in its messiness, and in its perfection. Knowing it is all good. It is all God. And so I just say thank you. And so it is.